Hello people, and welcome to another knife review on this channel, A Dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and tonight I'm going to be reviewing the Civivi Appalachian Drifter 2. For those of you who think that this knife looks familiar, it is because it is a liner lock version of a previous Civivi model known as the Rustic Gent. The Rustic Gent came in D2. This one comes in S35N. There's also, I believe, a couple of versions that come in a full G10 without the bolster and a Nitro V version. Just for those who have it, the dimensions are almost identical, length, width, everything else. The only major significance is in the thickness along the blade stock, where the liner lock is definitely slimmer in that sense. Similar degrees of contouring, and quite honestly, if we are to weigh them, you might be surprised to learn the backlock version is 2.57 ounces, has a half stop in sort of homage to the slip joints it emulates. This one does too, and 2.43 ounces, so under 2.5 ounces for the liner lock version, which is very lightweight, so easy carry EDC. I'm going to give you a couple of other rundowns here. I'll do first. We'll do a quick one here with the Kershaw Blur. As you can see, it is significantly smaller than the Blur, and not just any leak, but a random leak. Much closer to the leak size. In fact, it's so much closer to the leak size, you guys, I'm not going to keep doing the large knives. Simply because any large knife I put here, this is going to be significantly smaller. It's much more on the smaller knife side, so I'll just do the smaller knife references here. So there it is compared to the leak. And here it is compared to the CJRB Feldspar Small. See, very similar in size, blade length, lighter than most, that's for sure. And here it is next to the R2D2. This is my own personal customized model in purple scales and a blue aftermarket MXG clip. So there you are with that one. A little bit smaller, similar blade length, that sort of thing. All right, another quick comparison. The Para 3, this one, the lightweight version, as you can see, similar in length overall. Blade length is slightly longer for the Civivi, though not by much. Cutting edge with that because of the choil is more, but overall fairly similar in length, though not height or hand feel. All right, and one of its corporate brethren here, the Civivi Elementum. As you can see, the finger choil again gives the Appalachian Drifter a slight edge in cutting edge length, but overall length is in the Civivi's, or in the Elementum's favor, and hand space on the Elementum with the little bit of blade you give up gives you a significant increase in hand space with the choil and rest area there. So there it is compared to the Elementum. And of course, the new standard that has yet to get its own review, my Weenar. As you can see, in length, my Weenar enjoys a slight advantage over the Appalachian Drifter, and in overall width, it also has an advantage. In thickness, there is a slight, I would say slight advantage. Most of it enjoyed by the clip, but a slight advantage in thickness that way. And up near the front, it is only because of the extra contouring. Only at the curves does it have a little bit more. But overall, I think the overall girth of my Weenar is better. The blade thickness at the tip and everywhere else is just overall slightly better. But that's just my own personal opinion, and it is my own Weenar. It feels better in the hand. There's more hand space, as well as a bit more action. But again, That's just my opinion on the Wiener. All right, those comparisons being done, let's get into this as far as the design. The design of this is meant to mimic old slip joints, some backlocks. The old, in fact, the rustic gent that came out before it was definitely meant to evoke slip joint vibes with the backlock, and even so much as going as to have a half stop. Right, so the design and aesthetics of this are very much an homage to old style slip joints, the clip points, which I have to admit, clip points aren't my favorite, but the utility of the shape is hard to deny. You get a lot of the benefits of the same belly and blade shape of a drop point, but with the more acute tip that the clip point provides. So getting into a smaller area to initiate a cut while you move it in is easier with one of these. So if you have little small bits to work with where you need to get just the tip in and move it along, this definitely works better. And in that vein, some things like, boxes, taped boxes where you have to get just that little bit in there and then be able to get in there and make the cut along the tape, it works. The other thing it does well in is a lot of soft materials, in which the hollow grind on this really, really plays into the strengths of that blade design. The aesthetics of it may or may not go but it does have really clean lines. You look down the length of that, the lines match up. You look at it on the eye, you can see it's a single point until you get to the up sweep there near the clip, which is great for finger, thumb, or anything else whenever you're using it if you want to really choke up and get some extra control over that blade between your fingertips. The contouring feels great on this small cross section of a handle. The contouring really keeps you from having to pinch too tight, where you are feeling like you're pinching like paper or something really too thin in between your fingers. Which, if you do a lot of work with your fingers where you're pinching or squeezing, having to go into that small bit can cause a lot of cramps. A cramping in here. If this is something you use a lot in your day-to-day, if you use your hands to do work, if you're a laborer that does a lot of squeezing, especially on larger stuff, hammers, all that sort of stuff, coming in and then having to do something so small will definitely put a cramp on your usage. And I mean that pun with all intent. So having a little bit more meat in your fingers that you can relax your grip on and still have a good solid grip makes a difference in this liner lock over the backlock version that is slightly slimmer. Slightly slimmer makes it a bit nimbler, a little bit lighter. You can keep your fingers, but it does mean if you want to do something more heavy duty, the pinch that you have to get is a little too slim. It's almost unnatural. And there's a lot of people who don't like that. It's the reason they like the larger knives, right? I want something that doesn't make my hand feel like I'm trying to write a pencil or use a pencil or write with a pencil or something like that, right? I can understand that. So on that one it goes. On the mechanics of it, it's almost flawless, you guys. One of the things I'm going to go with the execution of this with the mechanics is the fit and finish on this. This knife is, I normally wait till the end, it's just under $100. S35 VN steel, carbon fiber, micarta, and a level of fit and finish on the transition there, on the matchup between the two materials. On this example, I can't catch my fingernail on anything. That's a cut above its own. I mean, what it's based on, the rustic gent, you can actually kind of see the slight. I mean, it's a visible. It's tight, right? If I move my finger, I can tell where it is. This one's a little bit better, but if I can catch my finger that it's just tiny. I can catch my fingernail just barely on this side. It's just enough to barely catch the tip of my fingernail. That I still consider that good fit and finish. It could be better, but for the price of this knife when I got it, I believe this was just under $60 when I got this. There's been a pandemic, inflation worldwide. It's not Biden's fault. There's a worldwide inflationary response to supply chain changes and all that sort of stuff, and yet that older knife has less fit and finish than this one, which is a relatively newer one and was probably manufactured during the pandemic. I'm impressed by that. The level of fit and finish for this, when it comes to the mechanics, Civivi with their bearings, their caged bearings are really fantastic. This one is tuned to be able to essentially roll it, so it's a little bit more smooth than drop shut, but takes a little bit of coaxing, but it is absolutely glass smooth. Takes no wrist flicking to get it out. Front flipper works fantastic, just like a lighter. This one doesn't really have the over the top bit. Let me see if I can even, I can't. I suck at those. I can't get ones that are designed to do it, but if you're good at those ones, this one does actually do it. So it's fidgety enough, but it's like you're better off using your finger to close it, but it is wicked smooth. Like that is just ridiculously smooth in your fingers. It's amazing. It really is, just the sheer level of this. But that's, that's okay. It is what it is. Let me see if I can show this. I don't know if you can see that in there. Boy, and the one day I don't have my stupid EDC flashlight. Let me see if I can get around here. The liner lock on this has a unique little feature. Let me see if I can show it here. If you see how the back, the part where it engages, let me see, there we go. You see where it's shining, it's engaged, and it's got the helical cut or a curved cut in there? Where the actual lock face engages, right? Where that, bam, right there. That's the lock face engaging, and it's got that curve cut. Don't think you can see how the rest of it matches into it. But the rest of it, that lobed area right in there that's cut out, matches into the liner lock. It has the same cutout. So it actually gives a lot of surface area contact to that lock. So even though this is slightly thinner and lighter, in order to do so, it's got a lot of surface area. It is trying to move away from the lock, so there's not anything to catch it as it pulls. But the fact that it's got that full contact, which means all of the metal in there, anything that's going this way that the lock is supposed to, is now putting that steel in compression. So there's no lock bar. Well, there is. I shouldn't say that. It's on the blade. Boy, if I can see this. There's the channels. Let me see. If you can see the channels inside there. My goodness, I'm terrible at this. So it's actually on the blade itself. So not only do we have now an actual stop pin that moves with the blade, but there's contact all over. This is a solid freaking lockup, you guys. The only other knife I know of on the liner lock that uses the liner lock and has a lobe that actually goes back, so anything that's using this, that's trying to break the lock this way, not just this way, not only has a stop in, but then has to work against multiple surfaces on the liner lock, is the Kershaw tumbler. I'm far from an encyclopedic knowledge of all knife models, but the Kershaw tumbler is the only other one I've seen that has that feature where the liner lock itself has multiple faces to engage it in multiple angles. It's the same concept that Cold Steel and Andrew Demko's triad backlock goes upon, as well as the compression of an actual pin. So there's a lot going on here when it comes to the mechanics, the design. The aesthetics are very old school, but the mechanics and the design on the inside are very much new engineering concepts, and using a lot of really good concepts and designs hidden within the classic that really give it a step up over the classics and the old school designs, while still looking like it there. It's a really good blending of all of the features that are good for EDC in the old design, while upgrading them to all of the benefits of a modern design, with bearings, with modern steel, with the ability to manufacture complex shapes and CNC them out of stainless steel, so that you can easily have closely mating surfaces that make for good lockup and unusual geometry. This is a fantastic bit of that kind of engineering and execution. I don't care if it comes from China, because WE does a good job. They're good, honest people doing honest work who live in a country that we often disagree with. Can you avoid giving some help to China when you buy to the Chinese government when you buy Chinese products? No, they're a different country. Anything you buy from them supports their economy as well as their people. But you can choose who you support. I don't buy Tucson knives. I think Tucson knives are the cookie cutters of the industry. I think they over design. They stretch the limits of what you could call copying just to get new designs out there. Every single example I've had from them has been a steel that didn't match up to what the steel should, or it was either the wrong steel or a bad heat treat. And they do direct marketing only through places like eBay and other stuff. So the return policy is spotty. They don't care because they'll sell on eBay from other stuff. That eBay's not going to block a product; they'll just block a seller. So there's shady stuff to do. I won't buy them. There's lots of other brands that I think are design thieves, and they're out to con the consuming public by creating subpar examples with over-the-top marketing. Those are companies I don't want to support. There are a lot of good Chinese brands that do good work, take pride in their work, and it is not about the country, it's about the people doing good work. So if you have feelings about China, that's your right. That's how I feel about it. I will happily support Chinese companies that employ Chinese people doing good work, good original work, that isn't stealing from other people's intellectual property. The Chinese government has a history of that, and companies that refrain from going down that road are Chinese companies I'm happy to support, because I think there should be more of them, and I want to give them as much power within their country as I possibly can, because I believe they'll help do better things. If I don't, I believe that because of the nature of economics, the crappy companies will win if there isn't people out there to support the good people. So it's too late to say we've got to sink China. We can't. So you've got to decide which of the Chinese people you want to support. That's really all there is to it. That being said, the fit and finish that they make, especially Civivi, for the price point, is really hard for any other company to match. CJRB is one that does a really good job, if you ask me. Best Tech on some of their knives is another. Artisan Cutlery and their stuff is great. There's a lot of Chinese brands out there that do good, but I have to admit, for the price points in the between the $50 and $100 range, there's not a lot of manufacturers, knife designs, or anything out there that can compete with Civivi. There just isn't. They have come upon here, and WE has done a great job of providing extremely high quality pieces at very reasonable prices. There's some other Chinese companies up and coming, QSP, other lower brands where they're going down with like 440C and some of the lower knife, the lower cost knife steels in order to get more brands and more models and more knives out there so they can increase their market footprint. I don't buy those. I don't like those steels. 8CR13 is about as low as I like to go. I consider Nitro V and 14C28N to be actually superior to that steel. Oh, for knives. But that being said, once again, noteworthy points, classic lines with new engineering, new partial metallurgy steel, the S35 yen. You can sharpen it on aluminum oxide stones, on the ceramic stones, but you're going to get better results with diamonds or CBN, that's for sure. There's still plenty of vanadium carbide in there to give there, but you can, much like D2, it'll take you a while and you don't want to go too fine, but you can indeed sharpen it on some of those, or the oil stones or anything like that. I still do highly recommend diamond for D2, S35 yen, or anything with more carbide content than that. But you can absolutely sharpen it on aluminum oxide, and it'll take a decent apexed edge. Like I said, you just don't want to try and go too fine with the aluminum oxide. Tends to have some tear out, but its toughness, its resistance to chipping while having that level of edge retention, decent enough. Corrosion resistance that it can get wet a little bit and go on your pocket and dry relatively slowly without too much corrosion concern. The intended purpose and cost of value and expectation on this knife is what's coming up next, and it is really where this knife shines. One, the intended purpose of this knife is an EDC special. It combines all of the best of an old slip joint, where you have the small pocket-friendly size with a useful all-around blade shape that lets you do lots of different tasks while being able to maintain an edge. With today's technology and today's adaptations, this is an edge that you don't have to sharpen for a long time. While you don't want to leave it in salt water or sitting in a mud puddle, it can get a little bit of rain on it. You can wipe it off and you're probably good. No problem on that. It's a beautiful knife aesthetically in a very subjective sense. But there's no denying that it's got classic lines that have been around in a long time, to the point of where it looks like a knife. You could draw the outline or silhouette of this knife, and most people would know that that's a pocket knife. Without any other size things. It might look a little bit like something else, but you'd be like, that's a pocket knife of just classic proportions, the old buck style. Anything else is just it's a classic knife, slip joint, buck, lock back, whatever. The expectation I have of this as an EDC knife is it to be good. What I wasn't expecting is, with all the little design touches, including the thin blade stock, the hollow grind on it that gets really thin behind the edge, the extra swedge that you can see with the light on there that gives it a lot of breakaway space, and even the fuller that makes it easy to get a hold of. This is a fantastic EDC knife. It will cut cardboard. There's bigger, better slicers, but with that thin behind the edge and the hollow grind, it allows you to get in there. The thin blade stock means you never have to move it too far out of the way. The acute tip means you can get into a well-taped box and essentially assert your will upon the flaps there and get through the tape. You can also score things quite well. It gets really nice when you start going. Your finger points right to it. You can do very, very complex and nice little touches when it gets there. It's extraordinarily good in that for that. The opening envelopes, thin blade stock again. The acute tip, much like a package, you can open up envelopes quite well. If you need to cut rope, it can do so. If you need to cut the cheese, It had the softness of the cheese will be mitigated by the nice hollow grind, any gaps that can have for it to be sticking on the fuller or any other soft or, essentially moist materials you need to move through. The hollow grind helps provide some air in there, give it some gaps so it doesn't stick and bind up your blade. So it really does have a lot of benefits. And the cost, again, this when I bought it, there might be some pandemic inflation. As of the time it's been relatively recent, was $99.95. It was just under $100. Carbon fiber, micarta, S35VN, bearings, deep carry, contoured, skeletonized, pins on the blade stock itself, so that it's a hidden stop pin that rests in channels in the liner. All around, the cost to value on this is actually quite high. The other ones I believe are like $70, so you're looking at almost a 30% increase in from the Nitro V and G10 to get to this. And again, you're probably looking at almost I think this was 60, it might be $65 now, but it was a little over 50 when I bought it. I think it was up to 60 when I last looked. So to get up to 100 for this is that's like a 60% or let's see, 2/3 of 60. Yeah, so you'd be looking at a 60% increase, 65 to 67% increase. So but what you get for that value, for that money, is a lot of value. You do get a higher fit and finish. You get the D2 has similar wear resistance, but not the toughness or the corrosion resistance of the S35VN. The bearings, the different type of stop pins in there, the whole skeletonized liner, the lighter weight for a liner lock over the back lock. That's fantastic. The fact that it's so lightweight. I can go on and on. This is a fantastic EDC knife, you guys. My particular example is very, very tight on the fit and finish. Again, I have rustic gents. I have a Civivi. In fact, the Civivi Elementum I use for size comparisons. So let's see if I can get that in there. It's an S35VN version, if you can see those letters. It is a special Blade HQ version that I put different scales on. It does not swap blades. They are thinner. For those of you who are wondering, I might be able to find it. There it is. See if I can. There it is. S35VN, moving it around right there. So that's the only markings on the blade too, by the way, for those of you who like the clean aesthetics. So again, for almost 30 minutes on this has been a pretty positive review, and there's really not a lot to like. I spent a few 2 minutes, and I'm sure there's a few people who tuned out as soon as I started talking about China, but it's worth being said in this world, day, and age. But you guys, this is well done. This is a good knife. This is a really good EDC pocket knife. It's outside of most people's budgets, but if you're looking to stretch your budget, you'll get value for doing so. This is a worthwhile stretch of your budget. If you're like, hey, I'm looking to have something a little bit. I want a little bit better than my 60 or $70 or my 50, 60, $70 might get me. I don't want a QSP anymore. I don't want the D2. I'm ready to step up. I mean, for crying out loud, this is a $99.95 knife, and it has the same steel as the $200 Wiener. That's going rates, by the way. It's always open for negotiation. But just to give you an idea of where this sits on the value spectrum, it's quite high. For those of you who wouldn't pay more, Nitro V's good enough, the toughness, blah, 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 by all means, go for it. I do like the extra bit I get for the carbon fiber and the micarta. It comes in several different flavors, but honestly, the fit and finish on my example, if it's indicative of the bulk of them, it's a step above both the Elementum and even the rustic gent on which it's based. That gives it a ridiculously good cost to value ratio. It's not QSP, Parrot, or Penguin level, or some of those other really high. It's not even quite the Rat 2 D2 level. Or Elementum. Elementum might have it, but they just, as soon as they go to like the S35 VN2, they go to the same price point. So it's hard to say for the upper end of the budget range, the under $100 knife, this just barely squeaks under, but it delivers. It delivers on the value. Yeah, it doesn't have like the SOG version of the the SOG Able Locker, their version of the Axis Lock or Crossbar Lock. But it does have a tried and true liner lock. It's got a very unobtrusive, so it doesn't take away from the classic lines, front or top flipper. And the deep carry just means it sinks into your pocket and is never really, other than the color, but it's matte, so it's not shiny and overly attention attracting. It just sinks into your pocket. So it's high on the value, high on the aesthetics. The design, it goes all in on the theme while providing engineering that supports a modern knife. The mechanics are top rate. It's extraordinarily well tuned. You can get it to engage through gravity alone and then shake it down, or you can just do the classic open it and then finger roll it down. It's so smooth. It as I screw it, you get that. You can almost just it's just controllable. Controlled drop. It's never going to fall on your fingers. It's really actually quite nice on that respect. And again, intended purpose for EDC, nailed it. Expectations, good EDC. Exceeded it. The cost to value ratio, high. Very high. Not as high as some of the price leaders where you get heat treated D2 for under $40. Like, this is more than twice as much. But fit and finish, materials, interlock, longevity, deep carry, arguably design aesthetics, attention to detail. Everything is a step above. Is it double? No, but the time it takes to do this on every single knife is easily equivalent to the rise in cost. If you start thinking about how much time it would take for a production line of people, everyone given even just a few minutes look-see at this, or even a couple people taking the time, you start to realize just how much more it can be when you start adding on grinding, fit and finish, all that sort of stuff. So its cost to value is high. Again, it's not going to sit here and take out the QSP Penguin or anything like that as far as a value leader or even the Rat 2 for that matter, or Felsway. Some of those still are there, or even its own Elementum. There, for larger hands, there's a very, very, very good argument to be made for something like the Elementum or a special edition of the Elementum, where you have a little bit more choil space so you can get your finger up if you have larger hands. But if you're looking for an EDC knife, this is well done at a good price point in a steel that you won't regret, that is also used in high-end multi-$100 knives and easily worth it. So you've got a great steel, good fit and finish, great materials at a price point that is affordable, even if it's on the high end of affordable. That to me is a knife that I can recommend. That's fantastic. This is right in the top of recommendation. This is the, should I get this? But I spend a little extra overtime at work, so I got a couple of extra bucks. Do I spend it on something that's just a little bit more there? Yes. I can easily tell you, if you want this kind of knife for a little bit cheaper and a little bit lesser, get the Rustic Gent that it's based on. They did a better job on the Appalachian Drifter too. The Rustic Gent is a cheaper Appalachian Drifter too. And it came out before it. So it's an earlier, cheaper version. They did a better job on this knife. So it gives you an even better knife for a bit more money. So yes, is it worth the upgrade? Yes. If you're one of those people where you, like I was, where I used to be like, you know what, I'm not just going to get a link. I want the M390 link. I wanted the 20 CV link, and I got it. It was under $100. If you're one of those people who's like, is this knife to be one of my knives where I come out of the 14C28 and 9CR18s, the D2s, the 8CR13s, if I come out of those budget steels and I go up a notch, is this knife worth it? And I would say yes. There are some other options out there, but this is so far from a bad option. This is one of the better options to recommend. And in doing so, I have spent 35 minutes now going off about the value of this knife because it is a great EDC value knife. It's lightweight. It's just under 2.5 ounces. It has an upgraded blade steel. It has great handle and scale materials. It is good stainless steel liners, not the titanium, but it keeps them thin so it's slim in the pocket. Deep carry pocket clip. S35 VN steel. Thin behind the edge. Flawless, smooth action. And a hollow grind with really good heat treat. This is everything that checks all the boxes you need in a modern EDC pocket knife, and it does it great. And with that, I'm going to end this review by saying this is one of the few where I will even give it a 5 stars. The only thing to complain about this knife is its cost, and if you're one of those people who just can't get over geography. Those are the only things to complain about it. But the cost is mitigated by the fact that for the money you spend, every bit of it goes to adding value to the knife in some way. Arguably, S35N has similar wear resistance to D2, but it has better toughness and better corrosion resistance, so you get the same wear resistance with better qualities in two of the other major categories for knife steel. So there's a lot of arguments why. It is arguably a better value, but at the very least, you lose no value. When you go up, you get an upgrade in everything. The only thing you don't get an upgrade is this has the same handle scales, but it has thinner liners. It has a long back screen. It has D2. It doesn't have as much machining on the liners to skeletonize them. It doesn't have the clip or spring things. It doesn't have the clip that's got to go on there. This extra material and extra screws and extra everything. For the amount of money you spend, you get a ridiculous amount of value on top. And that's really where the value consideration comes in. Yes, it's $100, but it's one of the best, most value-driven $100 knives on the market, and I'll stand by that. There's other Civivi knives that are good. They don't have S35 VN at this, and they're only like $20 less. Anything else at this price on those, you're looking at $90 to $100 is going to be the Damascus steel. So arguably it provides at least the same value as those in the Damascus steel and some of the carbon fiber handles for a similar price point. And I would argue that you get a better steel and a better fit and finish for the same money, even within the Civivi line itself. So in that respect, I consider this to be one of the best values in the knife market right now that people, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on it. Other than large hands that might not fit on it, there's a couple of things that it comes down to the person that really is like, well, it would be a great value, except it doesn't fit in my hand. I got extra large hands and I can only get 3 fingers. If you're one of those people, that's a different story. That's one of the few things where if you're outside of what can fit or something like that, if you're a person that just, that's too small for my hands, or it's too big, or I can't have a locking knife that's one-handed opening like a lot of Europeans, or something like that, or It's a 3-inch blade, so you can still have it in a lot of municipalities that have a restriction on 3-inch blades. So this is a high value, well put together knife. And again, I'm repeating my review. I'm gushing over it because it's really hard to overstate the value equation on this knife that you get. Yes, a $40 Penguin is a great value. There's other ones that are also outstanding values, right? A lot of the Reek knives or Rick or whatever, however you say that, are outstanding values at a relatively lower price point. But the gap between these, it's not. I believe these are like 55 versus 100, so they're around. It might be 55 or 60. I'll go with 60. Just make it. That's a $40 increase. That's a 66.7% increase in price, and everything upgrades. Everything except for possibly the bearings. Right, the action is still fantastic on this. But you don't get any insert locks. You don't get any. It's got pins. It's stainless steel. It's heavy. Is it a good knife? That is a fantastic knife. Every knife in the Reich brand, I even have a video on it, is a fantastic value. So's this. Because every bit of your money to upgrade that you spend is spent on something that upgrades the knife. You want to know the one thing that I have as a complaint about this knife I got, and I just saw it. Let me see if I can even get, this might work. The C. Trying to figure out how that lines up. The mouth of the C. It doesn't quite go straight through the knife, but it does seem to line up almost with the tip. Yeah, it lines up with the tip. So there you go. Lines up with the tip, but that makes it line up weird with the back. So the C looks a little off. In order to make the C look right, I got to tilt the knife at a weird angle. There's my complaint about this knife, you guys. The other thing, it's only for righties. There's not a left-handed option to even go under the scale. And if I was a lanyard person, I might be a little bit leery about a micarta backspacer that's got in there, but I know it's strong enough for the size of this, and it is a center pull, so you don't have a lot of off angle stuff to really put extra stress on that. My only concern is that there might be a point in time where this caught in my pocket and a yank broke it, but quite honestly, here's my take on that. I understand the strength of micarta and most lanyards, and my guess is if you catch that in something before that micarta breaks, you're going to rip your pocket. So we'll see. That's a close tie on the forces needed to do both of those things. In my mind, just with back of the envelope calculations here, no real testing done. So yeah, there it is. 40 minutes again, plus minutes, gushing over the Appalachian Drifter 2. It is that good, you guys. If you're willing to spend the money, do it. This is a fantastic knife. And a long a long review. It's Friday. Bless us all. And again, a worthwhile EDC knife that really, especially your mileage may vary on the fit and finish, but my particular this is my personal, I buy most of my review models, you guys. Not all of them. I have swapped a few, but most of my review models are purchased myself. So I don't have things if they want to send it along, much like the old Nick Shabazz said. You're not that old, Nick. If you send it along, I'm going to give it a fair review. And I don't care if you never send me another one again because you don't like what I have to say. I'll give it a fair review. If your work can stand up to it, we'll do it. But this one, this is fantastic and highly recommendable. 5 stars. It hits all of the right things. The design is poignant. It's right out there. It doesn't compromise. The aesthetics, while arguable and subjective, again, it nails what it's trying to do. And for my mind, gives it that knife look that's really, really great. The mechanics are top notch. Its noteworthy points are everything about it. Its intended purpose is to be a good EDC knife. And on that expectation, it over delivers, and its cost value ratio is right up there with some of the best in the business and in the market right now. That gives it a really high score on every point that I try and grade knives on. Is it my favorite knife? No, but as far as making it a recommendable knife, or one that I have very little to say is bad about this. And I've spent $400 on knives that I can nitpick more than I can nitpick this one. And that's saying something. Civivi really did hit it out of the park with this particular knife. It's really, really good, and it's worth the money over its other company brethren. I think it outdoes the other models, fit and finish, materials and everything in Civivi's lineup. It's really hard to, it's not going to fit everybody. It's one thing. Its hand space is limited in its ability to please everyone. People with larger hands are going to have a hard time. And if you get really big with this kick, it's going to put your finger really close to that edge. That's the biggest nitpick, is that it is not for every size hand. Bigger size hands are going to have a harder time fitting in this and keeping their fingers in a thumb over grip from not pushing really close to that sharpening choil tip. With that being said, you guys, that's it. That's the nitpick. Everything else is great. 5 stars. Fantastic knife. Well worth your money. Well worth upgrading to if you're going to spend a little bit more. If you're someone who's thinking about going up market, this is one of the best knives you can do it with. There's a couple of others like the SOG Ultra with the crossbar lock. I believe they call it the Able lock, or that might be Hogue. Anyway, the SOG has their crossbar lock variants that they have where you can get some of them, but they have even crept up above the $100 mark since their introduction. It's just really hard to get this level of fit, finish, and materials at this price point, and the Appalachian Drifter 2 delivers. That being said, you guys, this has been your dose of Drew in another Friday Night Knives knife review. Go ahead, watch it twice, come back in the morning, and don't forget to like and subscribe. This has been your dose of Drew, and I'm said Drew. You guys have a great rest of your night.